means you have to lose your fear of losing. So I link it to what I told you earlier. I launched Times Now. It was unsuccessful. I didn't know what to do. I was about to lose my job, which may appear to be strange to you today, but believe me, I was doing so badly, and this is 13 or 14 years back, that I was about to lose my job. I didn't know what to do. My back was to the wall. I had worked very hard, built my career, but the channel I launched was not successful. Not know what to do. The important thing, when you lose your fear of losing. Now, this may appear a little philosophical. Again, let me tell you from my life. So I have now taken the calendar to May, or somewhere around early or mid 2006. I don't know the exact date. I'm sitting at home on a Sunday. I'm about to lose my job. Everybody is making complete fun of me. I was not even a very well-known anchor at that point of time. And it's important you know this. And I got a phone call. And I was exasperated. I got a phone call and I had my news editors on the other side said, "Boss, you want to do an editorial meeting phone call? Are you coming to office?" So I said, "I'm not coming to office. Let's discuss the news stories on the phone." I said, "Okay." So they said, "This is happening, that is happening. What should we do?" So I'm talking on the phone. I'm giving some instructions. And then they say that, "Oh, by the way, there's one more story." I said, "What story?" "Well, boss, I don't think you'd be interested. It's a Hindi channel kind of story." I said, "Tell me anyway." They said, "Well, a boy has fallen into a bore well." This is the first I heard of the story. I said, "Where?" They said, "This is in Haryana, in a place called Kurukshetra." I said, "Okay, so tell me more about it." They said, "A boy has fallen into a bore well, and there's a lot of, the bore well was left open by the government. They were digging a sort of bore well. They forgot to cover it up. And a child was playing. He fell into the bore well. We don't know whether the child is alive or dead, but a lot of villagers have gathered around that area. A lot of people have gathered. They're trying to save the boy. The Hindi channels are covering the story, but it's in Haryana. It's a Hindi channel kind of story. Let's not cover it." And I immediately, I went back 10 years from that day. I'm talking about 2006. And I remembered that in 1996, my news editor in 1996 was a wonderful person called Appan Menon. There used to be a show called The World This Week. And one of the correspondents of World This Week was this bearded man called Appan Menon, who would report from different parts of the world. And Appan was my news editor. I was a reporter. Appan had to called me at that time in 1996, when at the year I started my career in television, and said, "Arnab, there is a story I want you to cover." I said, "What story?" They said, "A child has fallen into a open manhole." I said, "Where?" He said, "Outside a school in South Delhi. Will you cover the story?" And I had fought with Appan, and I had told him that, "Appan, I don't want to cover the story." And Appan said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because I want to cover finance, economy, politics, foreign policy. I don't want to cover a small story about a child falling into a manhole." And I had a huge fight with him. And, Appan was trying to tell me that, this is not an unimportant story. And eventually I did not cover the story. I don't know whether that boy in 1996, that child, boy or girl, survived or not. But I remember fighting with Appan. And Appan told me at that point of time that, "Arnab, one day you will realize that in India, a story of a child falling into a bore well happens only in India. What you consider to be a small story is not a small story. Someday you will realize that it's a big story." For 10 years, I had forgotten about that incident. But in 2006, 10 years later, when I was an unsuccessful editor in the city of Mumbai, a similar incident was happening right before my eyes. And my news editor was telling me on the phone, "It's a Hindi channel story. Maybe you won't be interested in it." And I remember telling him, "Just hang on." I put the phone down. I drove to office. I followed the story. And for 3 or 4 days, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 days, non-stop, The only story that was on Times Now was the story of a young boy called Prince. The name of the child was Prince. For 2 days, you all were very young, I think, you would not know, but you must Google search the story of Prince. For 2 days, we did nothing but save Prince. We opened up the phone lines. There was no Twitter then. We opened up emails. We would tell people to call us, send us messages through text, through email, call us, tell us whether government apathy was the reason that Prince was in that situation. So we split the screen and we said, is Prince's condition the height of government apathy? We woke up the system, and eventually, believe me, all the politicians landed in Kurukshetra. All the police officers landed in Kurukshetra. I remember the member of parliament landed in Kurukshetra, the army landed. For 2 days, this country, ask your parents, because you were young, ask your teachers, for 2 days in this country, the whole country came together. We have so many things which divide us, right? But the whole country came together for Prince. People would call, engineers would call saying that, you know, there is a borewell. If you cut the borewell like this, if you do it at this angle, you will save the boy. And now let me tell you, when I had launched the channel, we were sitting in a room, and someone had told me, Arnab, what should be the tagline of your channel? And I said, feel the news. They said, you give us a visual descriptor of feel the news. So I said, feel the news is any news moment. Say Sachin Tendulkar is scoring a century. There is no audio over it. There is only a heartbeat which goes dhak dhak, dhak dhak, dhak dhak. And by seeing the pictures, you emotionally involve yourself in the story. You've got to feel the news. And I kept saying the problem in this country is people don't feel the news. People watch the news. People read the news. There are no emotions involved. There are no emotions involved in the news. So I kept telling people that what we can make people do is feel the news. We need to get people of this country involved in the news. And I remember that Prince was eventually taken out after 2 days, or at least a day and a half. I don't remember the exact time. Now I'll come to the lesson. Eventually there was a officer or a Jawan from the military engineering service who brought out the child, covered him in a cloth, an orange cloth, a yellow cloth, and took him out. And my whole newsroom started looking at the TV, and there was pin drop silence. And believe me, we were all relatively young. I was in my early 30s. Rest of my team was in their early 20s to mid 20s. And we were all looking at the TV because we wanted to know, were we successful? Would Prince come out? And eventually, after an hour or 2 hours, someone from the army came out and he said that Prince is alive and he's being taken to hospital for treatment. We had saved the life of a 6-year-old boy. And my whole newsroom started crying. My entire newsroom started crying. I don't know if you remember the story or how many of you would remember the story, because sometimes, you know, in our country, things come and go. We forget about it. But my whole newsroom started crying. And now I come back to the life lesson. Listen, students, I remember when I was doing the story of Prince, I was considered to be a failure. My channel was considered to be a failure. So what happened was, when you lose so much, and when people say that you are a failure, you lose the fear of losing. You lose the fear of losing. So you play your innings without the fear of losing. Students, it is important that without failing, you lose the fear of losing. After failing, I lost the fear of losing. You must lose the fear of losing without necessarily failing. You must play every game without the fear of losing. You must not play defensively. I'm not saying play aggressively, but play your natural game. Am I making sense to you? If I am, then at least give me a thumbs up or something. Am I making sense to the students out there? Do not have the fear of losing. I would have done everything I have done in life 10 years earlier if I had not had the fear of losing. And the world is becoming younger. It is your world. Now, and imagine if you don't have the fear of losing and you play your natural game, how wonderful things would be. Imagine if I did not have the fear of losing, I would not be replicating NDTV when I launched. And it has changed my entire approach to journalism.